Welcome everybody to A Balanced Life here on Black Star Network. And today we're talking about Don't Judge Me by My Decade. I know it is really difficult sometimes not to judge because we say it all the time. We listen, but we don't judge. Say it with me now. We listen, but we don't judge. Well, in reality, we somewhat do. We often think that various generations either don't know enough or they think they know it all. So today we're going to be joined by our guests who will shed a little light on what it means for us to somewhat coexist together, discover how to get along with the various generations, while at the same time, sometimes we need to put some generations in their place. We're joined today by our faves, Deborah Bell, Katrina Smith, and Levita Marshall. Welcome in, ladies.
Hello.
So I'm going to just start it off. How many of you have been judged by your age, by your generation? What are some of the things that people say to you? You're like, I don't think I'm being categorized correctly. And how does that make you feel? I'm going to jump right in and start with Pam Sam.
I think everybody's always judged by their decade. You know, I'm in my late 50s, and there's always somebody, an elder, who says, you know, you're young. That was back in the day. You don't know anything, that sort of thing. Of course, that's going to happen. And I think us as Gen Xers, we tend to also judge the generations behind us as well. So I think there's always going to be some judgment between generations.
It's really hard, ladies, because, sometimes we want to talk back and sometimes we just want to sit and take it. Levita, so are we all in the same generation? Levita, tell us, what are some of the things that you've heard?
Yeah. People still considering, like she said, the elders like, oh, you're just a baby, I think we've chatted about this, before we got on, and you're just like, I know, I'm actually in my mid-50s. So I kind of know some stuff, and I've been there. I have some great life experiences as well. So.
Yeah, I think that you both bring up a very valid question. I'm going to come to Katrina next, because oftentimes that lived experience in our age, we want to tell the older people what we know and, and kind of just jump right in and be a part of the, the mature crowd. And then they're sort of like, yeah, catch me later. Katrina, what is it like for you?
Well, it's different for me because people don't realize how old I am. And so I don't let them know. I let them assume whatever decade they think. And I sit back and then I absorb it. And then at the right moment, I strike them with, wow, that's interesting. I have to do that since I'm retired. And so that always freaks them out because they're like, well, how old are you? I said, well, don't worry about it. I think, the wisdom part is I'm old enough to appreciate what they've been through. And I'm old enough to know that I get in where I fit in.
Okay, we're getting in where we fit in. Now, Deborah Bell, we all have these lived experiences, and oftentimes, the gray-haired ladies, you throw people off, Deb.
You know what? That is so true that I throw people off. I remember I was visiting a friend in New York, and I took the bus to her school. I get off the bus, and this guy who doesn't know me from Adam says to me, oh, you must have dyed that hair because you're not that old. I said, excuse me, sir, you don't know me. You don't know me. And so I get that often that, yeah, did you dye your hair? No, I didn't dye my hair. This is the blessing that God has given me. And it comes with the many years that are attached. I'm over 60.
I think that's amazing because each of us has our own stories about how people judge us by how we look, our hair, what we dress, and all of these kinds of things. But there's something that really resonates, when we talk about it, we're not offended by it. I think we take it all in stride. I mean, the first time somebody calls you ma'am, were you ready for it? Because, I think all of us on here, are Gen Xers. And so with that in mind, people have a tendency, they don't know where to place us. the Gen X generation. I'm starting with us because we're like amazing. And so when we talk about the other generations, like we were the young people who were latchkey. We had the keys to the house. We, made our own meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner sometimes. We stayed out all day, no cell phone, no quarters, no pagers, no nothing. And nobody looked for us. How does that make you feel being like in the center of all the generations, Lavita, to what you bring to the table to kind of guide these next generation?
Yeah, I think I like being Gen X. I think that we're kind of the glue that holds, those two generations together. We're a good buffer between the younger, is it Gen Z and millennials, right? We're a good buffer between the boomers and the Gen Z and millennials. I really do. I think we're that glue that just holds those generations together. And because we've actually, I think we just have the best ability to relate to both of those generations. I really do, because we're in close contact with baby boomers because they're our parents, and we're in close contact with those Gen X and millennials because, those are our children, our nieces and nephews. So we can pretty much relate to all of those generations, whereas some of those generations might be kind of disconnected to each other.
I like that. I want to ask Katrina this question because as Lavita was talking about being relatable, sometimes they take us, for granted, the younger generation, because we always say, oh, but we're not, is your little friend, because we are like the cool auntie. We're a lot of fun. We're easy to communicate with. How do you help separate that balance between respect and authority and being real cool?
That's an interesting perspective. I think I'm always real cool as a retired educator, so I'm able to bridge the gap. I know the lingo. I try to stay up with it. I know the latest dances, the latest TikToks. I'm out there, but I also say, I'm not your little friend, and I know where to draw the line. And I think you hit a nail on the head, Jacquie. That's one of those common phrases we grew up with. I'm not your little friend. And my kids laugh about it now because they'll say that was one of the lines. Be like, look, remember, I'm not one of your little friends. I think for me, though, how I use it to my advantage is by the wisdom, being able to sit and not judge. Like you said, when you open the show, I listen and I don't judge. So I sit back and I listen to both sides of the coin, and I find where I can make the message meaningful and impactful. I listen for my way in so that I can have those conversations and be relatable to them, where I can share wisdom without preaching down to them, or where I can share guidance. I like to do the what if. Oh, that's interesting. Sometimes I just play like I don't know, even though I know, because I want to hear their whole story, their whole perspective, without giving them my take on everything.
I think that now that you talk about wisdom, and I think, when you say that, Deb, she just mentioned about being able to listen and allowing the other person to be heard. For this generation, the one that we're in, is that something that comes naturally onto us, wanting to hear other people, share their thoughts, feelings, and emotions? And do you think it stems from us as kids not being heard? Because, we grew up with the children were to be seen and not heard.
Well, let me start first with, I'm in the boomer generation. So
come on, 1964, whatever.
Yeah. So right on the edge, really, between, I think their list is 46 to 1946 to 1961. So absolutely, I came up in that generation of children being seen and not heard. There was no back and forth. There was no talking about how you feel in that generation, in my generation. But when you look at how easy it would be to just listen and give your input, I think that I don't know whether it's the generation or the personality more so. So many of us have been in spaces where we weren't heard. And when you're not heard, you want to be heard. And so it may be very challenging coming from that perspective to step back and listen. And then, as my sister before me just said, Katrina, just then find a space to come in and find alignment. Find a space where you can benefit the other person in what you do know and the knowledge that you have gained. So I think it kind of depends. But for those of us who have not been heard, baby, we want to be heard.
For those who have not been heard, we want to be heard. I'm going to take a break. And when we come back, I want to dive in with Pam Sams, because each generation, even though we've heard certain things about who we are and how y'all expect us to be, our relationship with money from generation to generation can be a blessing and a curse. We'll be back in a moment after the break.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Bria Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
Welcome back, everyone. And as you can learn and hear and listen, and I hope you're taking notes, that each of us from generation to generation finds our space. And we, as Katrina said, we get in where we can fit in, because sometimes our voice is necessary and needed. And then other times we do need to just go sit down somewhere, as you know, Dr. Tierney would often tell us when she's on the show. So Pam Sams, let's have this conversation, because each generation, you know, as we move forward, we've got the silent generation, the traditionalist generation, we have the boomers, the busters, the Gen Z, the Gen X, the Gen Alpha, the millennials, and then Beta. And they all start with like 2008, and then they go up to like the early or mid 1900s. And we do have people who are living into their 80s and their 90s. And when we talk about these conversations from generation to generation, what should our relationship with money look like?
Yeah. That is a big challenge. If you ever read the book, Psychology of Money, I think it's Morgan Housel, very interesting, because it goes through the generations on how different generations view money and how they deal with it. But it also comes down to how you were raised with money. So with my clients, I do have that conversation on, what did you learn about money growing up in your household? How was it taught to you? Was it discussed? As we had talked about before, being seen and not heard. A lot of times with our older parents, money was not on the table as a discussion. And so we have to kind of figure it out, especially as Gen X's. We are the independent generation. So we kind of figure it out on our own in terms of money, and maybe not seek counsel as we should. The millennials and the Gen Zs, they have kind of seen a little bit of what we have achieved as Gen Xers, and they kind of try to live the lifestyle that we have provided for them. And I believe we had that conversation in an earlier episode, is that now they're used to a certain lifestyle. And then we get the ones that were born after 2008, and they can kind of see the effects of what the stock market crash and the great financial crisis did. And so they tend to be a little bit more conservative, like the baby boomer generation. So it's very interesting dynamic on how you grew up with money, but then also what's been going on in the world and how they view it.
Let me ask you a second question, because as all of you are thinking about your relationship with money and how you've raised your kids to understand money, I literally was thinking just the other day that, having been a teen in the 80s during the height of Reaganomics, I often feel like today we're back, not pinching and counting pennies, but being very frugal and very mindful of how we utilize money. Pam, what is the difference between people who just want to spend,
Mm-hmm.
and the awareness that's needed to use money as a tool? Because that's basically all it is. But there are some people who they just crave it, have to have it, will do anything for it. And the rest of us are like, for every dollar I break, I'm putting it over here. So how do we balance those conversations with our loved ones and others in our sphere related to money?
Yeah, it really comes down to, again, how you were raised. And, if they're a couple, you may have been raised differently and your spouse may have been raised differently. And so you have to kind of come to a consensus on, we're not going to be spending everything. One can be very spendthrift and one can be very miserly, so to speak. And unfortunately, I tend to be the miserly in my relationship with my husband because I had older parents that were born during the Depression, 1930. So every nickel, every dime that you could save was, basically saved away. They really didn't trust the stock market, so they didn't save. They did a lot of saving, but they really didn't do it investing with that. So, of course, you have to do kind of a self-assessment of where are you going? What are your goals? Of course, I always start with goals. And then what do you need to do to achieve that? And then that's kind of where you set the groundwork on. I don't need to be spending everything. I do need to also save as well. And if you do have a spouse that's on the other side of the spectrum, not to say that my spouse does a lot of spending, but we have these situations where, maybe we save for that particular situation versus we're going to spend right away and then put it on a credit card and deal with it later type of situation. So you have to kind of take a self-assessment, but also an assessment of what's going on in your household on the way they was raised with money as well.
I'm going to ask everybody this question. Cash or credit in your relationship with both, Katrina?
I'm a cash person. I really don't do credit. Cash. I pay for it and I'm done with it. I don't want to be owing anybody money.
I like that. Lavita, are you cash, carry, credit? How does that work?
That is definitely me. I am cash. My husband, he jokes all the time. He said, girl, you can take out our entire family out to dinner because you, with the cash in your wallet, I don't know anybody else who does that. And I'm like you. I'm the layaway kind of person too. Y'all remember the layaway? Oh my goodness. I love layaway. You just put your little cash on it and I'm done. I don't want to owe anyone. Yeah, I'm not a credit person.
I love that, Deb.
Yeah, after becoming debt-free in 2008, cash it is all the way. As everybody else has said, once you pay for it, you're done and you move on to the next thing. Absolutely cash.
Okay, so I asked that question because I know that there are generations who have a difficulty because they want it now. There was this whole have it your way, get it instantly, that gratification that you get from having it now and not being able to wait. Having that same type of relationship with money related to things can cause people to just literally crash and burn. Katrina, from a faith perspective, and I'm coming around to all y'all on this one, because that relationship with money and where it can lead you into seasons of depression and desperation, why is it important to have a healthy relationship with your money?
So the root, we could quote the Bible about the root of all evil, right? But it starts with us, right? Our relationship with money. I think Pam hit it on the head when she was speaking. Depending on how you were raised, how your family valued money, were you ever sitting in the room when money was discussed? That plays a big part of how you function with money as an adult. Like we said, we grew up in the generation where children were to be seen and not heard. So a lot of times we weren't in the room when the money conversations happened. And so we grew up with a different belief in money. From a faith perspective, we think about this money rules the world. Does it really? We know the real person who rules everything and has being over the whole entire world. So does money really rule the world? I don't think so. Money can be something that is a tool, just like anything else, to help you. It's how you put value in that money. Is it something you worship? Is it something that's the end all to be all? You got to have Gucci, Louis. It needs to be now. You got to have everything on demand, Amazon and everything else. You at Shein every 2 hours buying something, having it ordered and sent to your house. But then you have no life insurance. You have no policies to take care of your family if you become disabled. You have nothing in savings for when you retire so that you can still pay your bills. You're worried about check to check. And I get it. I was a young person living check to check. You take that $5 that you would spend at McDonald's and put it aside and let it grow. You start small until you can do better. So I tell people you do better when you know better. So we're now having these conversations with our young people. And so the expectation is that they're going to do better than what we did.
I appreciate that entire discourse because, Deb, that is one of the things that we have to be mindful of, the which biblical principle, you mentioned about never be a borrower or a lender be is one of the things that you alluded to related to not owing people and, having this debt free, this faith-based relationship, Deb, is like stewardship. How do we stay in tune with being good stewards with our dollars so it does make sense?
The first thing I believe is what Katrina said. It starts with you. Yeah, we could talk about money being the root of all evil all day long. We can talk about stewardship principles, but when we bring that in, there's a responsibility attached to that I will take ownership for my role in how I manage. And that could be managing me, that could be managing my money, that could be managing my time, whatever it is that I'm wanting. I have the desire to be a good steward. And in that vein, then there's a responsibility attached to it. That means I will take the time to do my budget, to know where my money is going and not just spend, that I will set limits around what I spend. I think that for me, I didn't learn about money at an early age. So I grew up in that environment that Katrina talked about. I saw the spending that my aunt did because she loved shoes and she always did things taking care of us. So I saw the spending. I didn't see the savings. So then I did not have a good relationship with money. And it was not until being grown that I recognized that I had to take responsibility for the money God provided because everything comes from him. And what I did with what he provided, that if tithing is a part of my reference, that I did that, because that was one of the priorities. And then budgeting and saving. I didn't know how to save. I had to learn these things as an adult. And so now, as Katrina said, I'm teaching my son. He's investing. He has all kinds of little accounts here, there, and everywhere that he's investing into early. And so it can be learned, but we don't always grow up with it.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. When we come back, y'all, after the break, I want to continue this conversation because Pam Sams talks often about this money mindset. I want to dive in with her and Levita and how do you get that money mindset and pass it on, to your children who are watching how you build your own relationship with money. We'll be back in a moment after the break.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Welcome back, everybody. And I can tell you, I think I might have to have a new relationship with my money. I'm debt free and I like it. And I know Pam will say there's really no such thing as debt free because we're always paying on something. So let's come in and have those two conversations, y'all, because when we think about our relationship with money and Pam, that money mindset that you talk about, what are some of the principles of the money mindset that we need to have? And then we'll talk a little bit more about how do we pass that on to the next generation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, your views with money and how you talk to yourself about money is, it's all about words. So when I speak with my clients often, it's not, I won't say, I'm poor or I'm broke or those sort of things, because like I am in the process of acquiring abundance. So really the words as well kind of puts you in a money mindset to really be good stewards of your money as well. So really looking at aligning your values also works with your money mindset as well. We talked a lot about how we grew up with money and what we value as well. So I go through a values exercise often with my clients as well to make sure it is in alignment with how they're using their money as a tool. So really more values-based financial planning is where I focus in on. But it's all about the words and your choice of words. When you talk about your relationship with money, if you're always in a lack of in a lack mentality, then you don't have a great relationship with money because you're always trying to chase it and it's eluding you as well. And I always have this phrase is that treat your money like your best friend. If it's going, I'm going to hold it close to you. You're going to respect it. You're going to do all of the things you need to keep it close with you. So that's kind of where I fall into the money mindset. I wanted to kind of piggyback on what Debbie had said about saving. I always tell people is that, we're in this generation where, or this environment where everything is on Facebook, it's on social media, and we're trying to keep up with the Joneses. Saving is not sexy. I mean, the things that we buy, the Louis and the Gucci's and all of that, it can be seen, it can be displayed. I would say that people's social media is basically the highlight reel because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes with that. But savings is not sexy. I would experience, of spending. That's where, unfortunately, we fall victim to on really trying to live a lifestyle that we may not be able to actually afford.
I appreciate you saying that. They're actually, one of the generations is split in two. Between the 1950s and 1960s, they were actually called the keeping up with the Joneses or the Joneses generation. So I totally understand, what Deb was saying related to how we comparison and wanting what other people have. It's not necessarily a great way to live. Lavita, when you think about your relationship with money that you have, and not necessarily how you grew up, but the one that you developed, you mentioned about being debt free. How do you pass these principles on to your kids? But most importantly, what is your definition of debt free?
Okay, so you just mentioned something about like comparing ourselves, to others. And that was actually one of the highlights that I took out of the book. I did read Psychology of Money. My husband and I read it last year, and it talks about, I'll never forget, he talks about enough, like enough. What is your enough? And how we need to stop comparing ourselves and we need to set those financial goals, because you have to just get to the point where it's just enough. And he talked about, how Warren Buffett, who is one of the wealthiest people in the world, he still lives in the same home that he and his wife purchased, all those years ago. One thing that we say in our household is that how you are with anything is how you are with everything. And so that definitely bleeds into the whole financial area. And so one of the things that I want to say is, when I was a child and my relationship with money was pretty healthy, because I'll never forget, I had a clear glass piggy bank. I wanted that piggy bank to be full, and I never wanted to deplete the piggy bank. So whoever, I don't know if it was my mom, whoever bought that for me, I think they planted an amazing seed, because I could see it visually just filling up and filling up and filling up. And I never wanted to empty it until I couldn't put any more coins in. And I really believe that that was like the start of a pretty, healthy relationship with money. And so for me, that's just one of the things that I took into our marriage. And I'm a very frugal person. I love saving money. I'm a coupon person. And I know I did the right thing, because literally when my kiddos, they're adult children now, they'll be at any store, they'll be at CVS, and they'll say, "Oh, Mom, wait, do you have a coupon on your digital account?" So I know I did the right thing. I know I did. And so I love that. I just instilling those, savings and those kind of techniques. Like I said, how you are with anything is how you are with everything.
That's very interesting, because you had that whole visual of a clear piggy bank, and mine was pink like a piggy. And I remember having to shake it to determine whether or not it was full enough, before I could, or every time I'd have to take the little button at the bottom, and dump it out and count it and put a tally on the wall. And I think sometimes, like Pam said, with language, also visual. How do we today, Katrina, show money? I mean, it's use of it, it's understanding of it, and you especially, because you have grands. And so with your grands, how are you teaching them to deal with money? And at what age did you start instilling principles and concepts of money?
If your child can order off the McDonald's menu, then you need to start teaching your child to save money. Okay, if your child can go sit in a restaurant and order something off of it, you probably should start teaching your child how to save. I will say my oldest grandson, he's just the apple of Mimi's eye, as the other two are, and he had an iPad. Well, that grandchild broke that iPad, and what was decided was that it would not be replaced. He would have to earn and save his money, and once he saved enough, we might match it to replace the iPad. So at 7 years old, he learned, he equated his chores he was doing to how much money he could make. And that if he did so many chores, he could come out by the end of the week making $40. So he would hustle all week long to make sure his chores were done so that he have his money. And then he count his money and put his money up. When it became time to pay for the iPad, we thought we were going to have to match it. The child had saved enough money to walk into the store himself and buy the iPad outright because he refused to spend any money. We would say, "Oh, if you want that, you can buy with your money." "No, that's okay. I don't need it." Mm-hmm. So you start that early. If it's something valuable that they want, even as a little person, say, "You know what? You can use your money to get that." "Oh, no, that's okay. I don't need it then." See, they need it when it's your money, but tell them to spend their money and see how much they need.
Wow. This is all so very true. I love that we're going from generation to generation to generation, because the younger generations are able to see not only how we utilize money, but the wisdom. We really put some thought into what we're going to put our money on and how we're going to spend it. And I want to ask each of you this question, because I know a lot of families do not include their kids in conversations about why they can or cannot have a thing. And it's because, like, whoever's head of household or the family goals, family vacations, buying a house, relocating, whatever it is that they want to do, they have a tendency to exclude the children from the conversation. So when a kid gets a no, it's this big ordeal because they don't know that something greater is coming. And I'm going to start this question with Pam. Mm-hmm. In order to, I don't know if you can mitigate, the fallout from kids being told no, because we know the whole attitude and the door slamming and the this, that, and the other. You mentioned a lot about language. How important is it to just have basic conversations about the goals of the household?
Yeah, I mean, that's where you, really sit down and say, I always encourage family meetings, and including the kids as well to the best that you can. Some grown folk stuff you may want to keep out of it, but as much as you can, really include your kids in goal setting. So if you're going on a family vacation or you're saving for a particular item that's going for the household use, you're going to really sit down with them and explain, okay, because I grew up in that generation where we did, we saved for, kind of the layaway. I'm dating myself, green stamps, it was, you saved up, you put that thing in that book, and then you got the stuff for later. So that is what I try to instill with my children, is really, hey, right now, this is what our goal is. Family vacation 2026. This is how much it's going to cost. This is how much we're going to set aside each month for that particular goal. We may not be able to get all of the things that you want right now because we're setting aside that monthly for that particular vacation or travel budget. So really having those goals and explaining to them the no, besides this, because I said so, no, you really say, okay, if it's for a particular reason and what the goal is, this is how much we're setting aside. And then everybody can chip in on that. I'm going through that with my adult children. If you're going on vacation, mom's not footing the whole bill this time. If you want to go on family vacation with us next year, 2026, this is your portion of what it's going to cost for plane tickets or the hotel stay. And then this is how much you need to put aside in order to be able to achieve that particular goal. So really having that conversation open and honest with your children.
I like that. I know I have to bump for a break. So when we come back after the break, we're going to continue this conversation. I'm going to jump in with Deborah Bell because there's something about sacrifice that helps the entire plan come together, but the willingness and the ability to do so oftentimes can trip people up. We'll be back in a moment after the break.
What's up, y'all? Look, Fanbase is more than a platform. It's a movement to empower creators, offering a unique opportunity for everyday people to invest in Black-owned tech, infrastructure, and help shape the future of social media. Investing in technology is essential for creating long-term wealth and influence in the digital age. The Black community must not only consume tech, we must own it.
Discover how equity crowdfunding can serve as a powerful tool for funding Black businesses, allowing entrepreneurs to raise capital directly through their community through the Jobs Act.
Welcome back, everybody. And as you can tell, money, and conversations around the wisdom and the use of it are a very big part of generational dialogues so that everybody can get not only what they need, but some of the things that they want. Hey, Deb, let's have that conversation because oftentimes so Deb knows this phrase, not equal in giving, but equal in sacrifice. And I think it's one of those phrases that I've used over time that says, I may not be able to do what everybody else does, but I can do my part. Can you talk to us about the benefit of doing your part?
That's really good because it's important, especially in family, to make sure that everyone understands the goal and how to get there. I love how this has been explained throughout our conversation. So one of the things that I do with my son in particular is I want to make sure that he understands how God factors in to what happens in our household. I want him to understand that when we are at a place where everything's not lining up, and even when we both done our part and there's still something missing, and then out of nowhere it seems that we get what we need, I need him to understand that God is a part of that equation. And so as we've set goals, as we've split bills, and as he's had to now come up with his part of what the need is in the household, he's also learned that when things don't always add up, God has an amazing way, because of our faithfulness, because of when you give, he also gives to you. He has such a deeper understanding of that context, because of the fact that I make sure that you know that the blessings that we receive, that comes from God. You know that when there's a struggle and we come out on top, that's God. That you know that blessing don't always equal to money. Sometimes the blessing is your good health. Sometimes the blessing is how God navigates a situation where what could have happened didn't happen.
That's
and
right.
so helping him to understand those things is one of the ways, now he has to pay his part now that he's understood how that really works.
I like that, because understanding how it really works isn't always that easy. I'm going to ask Levita this question, and I'm going to come to Katrina, because each of you have children who graduated from college. They are, starting or have been in their first jobs for a little while. And in that communication of stepping out onto your own, that's always a little bit difficult, because you have to navigate them through, while at the same time you have to kind of step back and give them space to figure it out. So Levita, when you think about how you've navigated your young adults toward, independence, having their own place, as you all have mentioned before, putting their budget together to live on their own, what does that sort of look like? So for our audience who is not quite sure if they're ready to have that conversation, because I know a lot of y'all out there are not ready to let your babies go, but at some point you got to kick them out of the nest. How do you set the stage and, plan for them to have a really good exit strategy?
Yeah. Okay. Let me tell you how we kind of started this journey. Even before we had children, every New Year's Day, my husband and I would get a hotel room, and we would make what we call the Marshall family vision. And we would write down everything that we were trusting God for that particular year. As our children were, being born, and as they were growing, we started to invite them at, whatever appropriate age that was. And we would eventually, it ended up being all 6 of us. We have 4 adult children now. But then we would get a hotel room, and it'd be all 6 of us, and every single one of them would have a paper, and they would have to write down what they were going to be trusting God for that particular year. And so that seeped into every Sunday. We started doing this family meeting at 6:00. We'd have our family meeting. We'd go over planners and calendars, and we discussed money. And so that is something that we discuss, and we let them have a voice, and we let them ask all those questions. And so they kind of grew up, seeing all of that, and they saw hard decisions. So one of the decisions that they saw us make was, okay, we have to move from where we're living in Texas. We need to relocate back to Houston to help take care of your dad's parents. And so, hey guys, this is what we need everyone to do. We all have to sacrifice. This is not going to be easy, kiddos. This is not going to be easy, but this is what God is calling us to do. And so from that, I think that really set them up for the mindset of sacrifice and giving. And we had so many talks about budgeting. So when those older 2, like you said, graduated from college and they got the jobs, they knew that, hey, we're in the real estate investing business. So we know mom and dad are going to, want us to get some real estate. And so the thing was for each four of them to own their own real estate. And so they did do the apartment thing. I mean, everyone did that. We're not anti getting your first apartment. That is a wonderful, fun experience to get out and do that. But after they had saved up money and we kind of walked them through that process, our oldest purchased a condominium, which right now she rents out, leases out to a tenant. And then our oldest son just purchased his first home about 3 months ago. And so those are conversations that we were having with them in high school. And so they were hearing it and they were seeing it. They were seeing us purchase properties as well.
No, I appreciate that, because oftentimes to get people on a path, you have to lay out the journey. Katrina, when you think about the journey of your young adults and how you're passing down these wisdom keys and tools to their children, help us set pace for that, because you can't throw it all at them at one time. You got to ease them into the journey.
Well, yes, you can. You can throw them out there. No, I get what you're saying about easing, but I think it comes with the conversation. I definitely appreciate everyone who's been saying family meetings. I'm a big proponent of having family meetings and having those conversations. I will say that when my children went to college, I kept that family meeting style, even though they were at college. You only had to call me one day a week. You got to pick the day and the time, and you called me that. So if your call was Sunday at 6:00, I didn't plan anything else, because Sunday at 6:00, that was your time with me. And we would conversate about your week, what you had going on. Hey, you got money in your account. What are you looking at spending, right? What I will tell you on the sidebar is one day, one of the children missed their call with me. So their call was that Sunday. They did not call at the appropriate time. So being the person that I am, I turn their phone off. So that child called me from another number and said, hey, my phone is not working. And I said, well, let me help you with something. I work so that you can have the things of luxury that you've grown accustomed to. And when you can't meet those deadlines, hence, if you weren't able to pay your bill, and right now your bill is only calling your mom once a week, then they will turn off your things. Hence, you have no phone service because you missed your phone call. So we have to be willing to provide life lessons that help them understand. I'm not, against parents who charge their children rent. It is nothing wrong with charging your child rent to stay with you. Why? Because hopefully you're teaching them that, hey, you're paying rent because wherever you go, you're going to have to pay something. And for parents who are smart, they use that money and they save it or put in an investment. So when that child then moves out, they're able to return that money. So that child had seed money to get started. So I think those are the things and conversations you have to do. I do not think, though, you wait till the last minute and go, hey, you graduate in 2 weeks. And by the way, you got to pay me rent. You should have been telling that child ahead of time, hey, you're going to be graduating. What are you looking at doing? Are you ready to move out? Do you have money saved? How about we get that first job? How about you take 6 months to save? You stay here. You use that money. You put it in a savings account that's growing money so that when you're ready to move out and you've been on the job a while, you're able to move out and you have some savings and something acquired so that you're able to step out and be comfortable. I do think, though, it is a process, but don't be scared to tell your child they have to pay rent. They live at your house. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing.
I like that. I like that. So I'm going to ask this question in reverse, and then I want to end with Pam. So Katrina, if we're getting young people ready, what is the one thing that you say they should develop? So I'm going to go Katrina, Lavita, Deb, and Pam. What is the one thing that they should develop?
They need to I'm going to give you 2. They need to develop their relationship with God. And second, they need to have a financial acumen so that they know what they're dealing with.
Okay. I like that. Lavita or Deb?
I can go. I think that it's important that your children develop a sense of knowing how to be resilient. And that comes from having had difficulties or challenges that you faced and figure a workaround, that it's not the end of the world when something negative happens, something unexpected happens, but that they develop resilience.
I love that. Lavita.
Well, definitely strengthening their relationship with God, because we know that when we seek him first, everything else is going to be added to us. But I also, got to pull the educator out in me. Those critical thinking skills, they go a long way. They go, I love critical thinking skills. Like, they will take you a very long way in life. Seriously.
All right, Miss Pam. What should these young people be developing? And for you older folk out there who haven't gotten a clue yet, she's had a word for you.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I always start with the financial piece, really having some financial acumen on how money operates. And nobody really ever teaches you how money works in this country. So whatever you have, teach your children about money. The other thing is really encourage them to be independent, but know when to ask for help. They're not going to be out there just floundering and doing everything on their own and being independent, but know when to ask for help.
I love that. Today, ladies, we have given our audience some tips and tools that they need that they can put into their adulting toolkit as they discover how to navigate this journey. We're not going to judge people by their decade. We're going to learn from each other. When we come back after the break, I'll give my reflection.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Welcome back, everyone. And as you can tell, there is a lot packed into not only becoming an adult, but also being able to accept the wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding from the various generations. We're all living longer, but some of us are tasked with some really great responsibilities of, moving out on our own, getting our own first jobs, getting married, having kids, and just discovering what it really means to live a full and balanced life. While at the same time, there are others who are seeking retirement, people who are raising, other people's kids, people who are in this space of taking care of elder parents. But whatever it is that you do, find time and space to learn about yourself, embrace someone who can come alongside you, and then also get a good relationship with your money because it matters. Thank you for watching. Bye now.